In this morning, we continue with our last lesson related with the different prophets and also the way how they received the messages related with the present truth at this time and also for us today. So our next character will be Moses. The Bible himself describes him as a prophet, but with a specific attribute that we read in Deuteronomy 34:10. And there arose not a prophet since in Israel like unto Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Patriarchs and prophets presented to us the following. He had a view of the history after the settlement of the promised land, the long sad story of the apostasy, and his punishment was spread out before him. He was permitted to look down the stream of time and behold the first advent of our Savior. Moses beheld the disciples of Jesus as they went forth to carry his gospel to the world. So we see here that Moses received direct communication, face to face. Other Bible texts that we have mentioned also say mouth to mouth, I will speak to my prophet. And we see here that not only Moses received messages from the past, because we know that he wrote the 5 first books of the Bible, and for the book of Genesis, he received completely by inspiration. He was not there. He for sure knew through oral tradition, was explained to him, but during the 40 years in the desert of Midian, he received this inspiration from the Lord. So in the case of Moses, we find a very interesting method how the Lord presented this. So we see that through the inspiration, he received not only the past, but he received also the present, because the majority of the books that he wrote down, he was there. He was part of this history. But at the same time also, he received the future. In this way, we see that the process of the spirit of prophecy is not only related with future or present events, because he received by inspiration all the book of Genesis, and he wrote down part of the book of Exodus also by inspiration, and all the other books also by inspiration, but with a difference. He was there. He was part at the same time from the things that he wrote down. So until which chapter of Exodus, he was not present there. Took the book of Genesis in your hands, and it's very easy to find out. When began the moment? Yes, brother.
Just a quick question, just to clarify. So you said that the spirit of prophecy is not only for the future, but also for the present, and did you say for the past as well?
Yes, it's presented also for the past. Because, for example, Abraham received a numerical prophecy. Which was the numerical prophecy that Abraham received? Noah, the 120 years. That was a numerical prophecy. But Abraham received another numerical prophecy.
Time in Egypt?
Yes, and how much was this? 400 years. Yeah, that was a prophetical numerical prophecy. So we find this prophecy. I use this example for the question past, present, and future. So Moses was not there in Genesis. He was not contemporaneous with Abraham. But through Moses, he received this prophecy that we didn't know that Abraham received it, a numerical prophecy. We know that Abraham received this because it's right down in the book of Genesis. So he wrote a prophecy that was given to Abraham, for example, this about the 400 years, and was fulfilled in his present time. And he was the one that led the people out. And is one Bible text in Exodus that says a direct reference to this prophecy, which is this, where you can find this out. And we will come back then to Moses, to the book of Exodus, in order to clarify these three elements that included the spirit of prophecy. The Bible text says, at this day, through this event, then the people of God went out of Egypt. Exodus. And between which chapters you need to look? Let us think first. Not only look in the book of Exodus. If I speak about the time when they went out, in which time, in which chapters you need to be located approximately?
Exodus 12.
Let me see. It's around there. I don't remember exactly. Do you find it? Which is the
1240 and 41. 430 years.
12. Yeah. Yes. Okay, let me see. Repeat it again first the Bible.
Yeah, Exodus 12, verses 40 and 41.
Yes. Yeah, this is correct, yes. So they say, now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwell in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day, it came to pass. So exactly in the fulfillment. Where is the prophecy that referred to the fulfillment exactly on this day? Let us go to Genesis. Genesis 15:13. Yes, brother. And he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So we have Genesis 15, we have Exodus 12, and then here we have 400, here we have 430. We have done a homework in the past that explains which is the difference, so we will not speak about this. Now, Moses wrote about this prophecy. He didn't receive the prophecy. He compiled the information. Through inspiration was given to him, so we have it. And we know that the prophecy, numerical prophecy about the sojourner, the time that the people of God will be without nation, without country, was given to Abraham and began with him the counting. Now, Moses write down this prophecy, not given to him, without being part of him. He was not even born. Now, in the book of Exodus, he was there. So who received the prophecy was Abraham. Who carried out the fulfillment of the prophecy was he himself, was Moses himself. So we find something very interesting in the case of the spirit of prophecy. So Moses writes down through inspiration a prophecy that he didn't receive. He only write down. Now, he was the one chosen by God to fulfill the same prophecy that he didn't receive, but he came to fulfillment in his person because he was the one chosen by God to take the people out of Egypt. And therefore, the verse in Exodus is so emphatic when says, even the selfsame day, so exactly in the same time that was prophesied, this happened. So this is this connection between the past that he wrote and the present that he experienced. Now, in the book of Exodus, in which chapter Moses began to be an important piece in the development of the history of the people of God. We come back to our original question. Began in Exodus 2, yes. It's part of chapter 1 in reality because it's when we find the command of the king, but specifically is in chapter 2. And then we find the story. So he wrote down his own story also under the inspiration of God. And we find the first official communication that the Lord gave to him orally right down in Genesis 3 when he called him to go to Egypt. But we have the proofs that God spoke to him before this, because this is after the 40 years in the desert. And during these 40 years in Genesis 3, he finished the book of Genesis, he finished the book of Job. So a lot of communication was happened between Genesis 2 when he came out of Egypt until Genesis 3, they are 40 years. Period. Okay? Because Genesis 2 say, okay, 15, chapter 2. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. And then all the events that happened until also he married Sephora. Is mentioned the two children. And 22, the last section, for he say, I have been a stranger in a strange land. And it came to pass in process of time. So this process of time is 40 years. 40 years. This process of time from chapter 2, verse 23. That this Pharaoh that wanted to kill him died. And then we began chapter 3 when the Lord called him to go to Egypt. So 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in Midian, and then 40 years again in the desert, but with the people of God. So his life was divided in 40 periods of time. So this pass of the time, and it came to pass in process of time, is when began the official appeal to Pharaoh that Israel need to be set free, to go out of Egypt. So we see here that this period of the 40 years in the desert is summarized in one sentence from one Bible text. And the 40 years in the wilderness with the people of God is the rest of the book of Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So, his childhood, his youth is summarized in chapter 1 and 2, and all the rest of his life. The last 40 years of his life is composed in the rest of the books. But all this that he received in different periods of time and different characteristics of information. So we have considered that he received information about the past, like example, the numerical prophecy of the 400 years. Now, the majority of the information written that we received from Moses was contemporaneous to him. For example, the sanctuary. All this occupy almost 2.5 book content from the revelation that he received. First, how to build the sanctuary, all the measures, all the plan of the completely sanctuary. Then all the sacrificial system. So all the system of adoration that the Lord decided. And then we have the completely book of Leviticus dealing with this point. All the priest law, how to present the offerings. All the regulations of the religious life of the people of God took this section. And the other section is the historical events of the people of God during this 40 years period. But the main information, or they took the 70% of the content, is the sanctuary and the system of worship. Beside these two main elements, he received many other visions that he never wrote down. We know that was very sad for him that during 40 years he encouraged the people of God to be firm, to persevere, to do what is right in order to achieve Canaan. Because he saw a completely generation die in the wilderness and don't achieve the goal. Now the second generation came to Canaan, but he, no. The Lord said to him, you are not going to cross the Jordan. And he prayed to the Lord many times. And the Lord said to him, stop praying to me. You are not going, and this is final. But the Lord gave him a comfort. Before he died, he went to a mountain. And this is very impressive description that we find in Deuteronomy about him. In the last chapter, chapter 34. And Moses went up from the plains of Moab unto the mountain of Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, that is over against Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead unto Dan, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah, unto the utmost sea, and the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, unto Zoar. And the Lord said unto him, this is the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, saying, I will give it unto thy seed. I have caused thee to see it with thine eyes, but thou shalt not go over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of God. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, over against Bel-peor. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre unto this day. And Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, not his natural force abated. So he was in his strength, and he was 120 years old. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were ended. And then Joshua took over. And then is verse 10. And there arose not a prophet since in Israel like unto Moses, that we have mentioned, whom the Lord knew face to face. In all the signs and the wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh, and to all his servants, and to all his land. And in all that mighty hand, and in all the great terror which Moses saw it in the sight of all Israel. In this mount top, he received the greatest revelations ever in his life. And this is what patriarchs and prophets presented to us. So he saw the future. He saw the future of Israel. And the testimony that we mentioned say, he saw the long, sad story of the apostasy. And his punishment was spread out before him. So he saw the deportation to Assyria, the deportation to Babylon. He saw also the first advent of our Savior. And he also saw the disciples and how the gospel will we carry to the world. So the Lord showed him what will happen with Canaan and with the people of God, until also the death of Jesus, his resurrection, the early rain, and how the gospel was given to the world. So he received prophecies from the past that he was not part of it, fulfilled in his present time, and received prophecies for the future that he never saw in this moment. But he sees this in reality because we know that he's in heaven. So everything that the Lord showed to him in this mountaintop, he saw after how the things develop in reality. So in which two Bible texts of the Bible we have the proof that Moses is in heaven? Two Bible texts. At least mention to me the book or the event. The Mount of Transfiguration. And the second evidence?
It's in the end of Exodus. It talks about, that after he had died, Jesus came down to raise him and Satan tried to guard the grave.
Where is written this?
I thought it was in Exodus.
No. He died in Deuteronomy.
Oh.
We read the last chapter in Deuteronomy said about his burial. In Exodus he was not dead. Jude, explain to us this. What you mentioned is in the New Testament. And we find it here. And this is verse 9. Yet Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses. Does not bring against him a railing accusation, but he said, the Lord rebuke thee. So we see that was a problem with this, because Satan wanted to keep him dead, because he said he have sinned against you. And we know that he resurrected, and he personally was sent by the Father to trust his son Jesus in a very specifically important moment of his life. So in Moses we see these three combinations. He spoke about a prophecy given in the past in an oral form to Abraham. But Moses was the one to write down this prophecy and to be part of the fulfillment of it. Let us see his brother, Aaron. Exodus 7:1. And the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a good to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Wow, very interesting. Do you remember what we have spoken before? God gave to Moses, Moses gave to Aaron, and Aaron gave to Pharaoh. Now, God is the one that say that Moses is prophet. But God also say that Aaron is the prophet of Moses. Because Aaron didn't receive any revelation. But he spoke to Pharaoh the words that God spoke to Moses. And in this case was prophet because he transferred. But was not the prophet of God, was the prophet of Moses because represented him. And this helps us to understand what is the meaning about prophet. So the prophet is the person that God chose to transmit information. And Aaron have done this. But after, Aaron was the one carrying the Urim and the Thummim. Was the first one that received this. And how we know this? That he was the first one. That God established this system. In which chapter of the Bible we find that the Lord established a new method of revelation parallel to Moses. Because Moses was alive. Moses was there. And God was speaking through him to the people of God. So in which chapter of the Bible we find that the Lord say, through the Urim and Thummim, I am going to communicate to you also. Where? We have studied this. Exodus 18. Exodus 18. Excuse me, 28, sorry, 28. 18 is the organization, 28. In 28, we find the garments of the high priest and the priests. And then is the first time that we find this new method that the Lord presented. Verse 30. And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. So here is the first time in Exodus 28 that we find the Urim and the Thummim. And we know that the Lord have used this several times to answer the questions or the consultations that the people of God have to him. Patriarchs and Prophets says, Aaron bore the names of Israel upon his breast. He communicated to the people the will of God. So this divine communication through the Urim and Thummim, which were found in the breastplate of the high priest, was one of the possibilities of revelation of the divine will. And this method of revelation was added because Moses was there and the Lord was speaking about Moses. But was added this other way or method of revelation parallel to the presence of Moses, because Moses was from the priest family, because he was a Levite also, Moses, but he was not priest, because the priest was only the family of Aaron. All the rest were Levites. But Moses never took office as a Levite because he was already the leader of the people of God, but he was also from the tribe of Levi. But the one that took upon him the Urim and the Thummim was Aaron. So at this time, we find that the Lord established another system. But that was not all. In Exodus 15:20, we find Miriam. And the Bible text say, and Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron. And Patriarchs and Prophets, page 382 says, Aaron and Miriam both were endowed with a prophetic gift, and both had been divinely associated with Moses in the deliverance of the Hebrews. So all the three brothers. So Moses, who was the elder? Aaron was the elder, which is the second? Miriam was the second, and then Moses was the youngest. So all the three, according to the testimony, endowed the prophetic gift. All three. Aaron first began transferring the information that God gave to Moses. So he was prophet of Moses, and Moses was prophet of God. Now, when in Exodus 28, Moses was in charge to put upon them the garments, and was a special ceremony. And Moses was the one that dressed up his brother with the garments of the high priest, and also the garments of the other priests, the sons of Aaron. So Moses was the one to perform all the ceremony, also the consecration, and put on the garments. So in this moment, we have this Urim and Thummim. But Miriam, we find that she prophesied even before the Urim and the Thummim. Where is the first writing reference about Miriam prophesying? Exodus 15. One second, maybe it's 14. 1 second. Yeah, it's 15. 1 second. So here we find, then sang Moses and the children of Israel, they sang unto the Lord. And then, 21. And Miriam answered them, singing yet to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider had the thrown into the sea, and so forth. So this Song of Moses have the male section and the female section. If you study in the Patriarchs and Prophets, here says, comment with this of Miriam, that Miriam answered them, and the choir was a male choir and was also a female choir. And if you study how the system of the music and the choir function in the Old Testament was completely separated. They don't mix male and female in singing. That was completely separated. So in this case, Miriam led the females with the instruments of music and also with the singing. And he also prophesies. So we find an interesting element here, that during all this period, or the 40 years, how many prophets we find? Even more than 3. We have Moses, we have Miriam, we have Aaron, and we will see more at the same time. Let us see it. The 70 elders receive also the spirit of prophecy, according to Numbers 11:25. And the Lord came down in a cloud and spoke unto him, and took of the spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. Patriarchs and Prophets says, 2 of the 70, humbly counting themselves unworthy of so responsible a position, had not joined their brethren at the tabernacle, but the Spirit of God came upon them where they were, and they too exercised the prophetic gift. So, who know why the 70 elders were chosen? Why? What was the office of them? Okay, we have different steps in the process of organization during these 40 years. We find in Exodus 18 the first level of organization. Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, came to visit him to bring Sephora and his sons to him because they remained there, because we know that when Moses went to Egypt, his wife and the children went to him, with him. But what happened one night in his trip to Egypt? Do you remember? The sons of Moses were without circumcision. They were not circumcised. And Moses knew that he needed to do this. Because who received this doctrinal point about the circumcision? Who? Abraham, not Moses. Abraham. Here, in the past, that was a doctrinal point established during Abraham's time. So who were the two first persons circumcised in the Bible?
The sons of Moses.
No, Abraham. Abraham and his son.
Which son?
Isaac and
No.
Ishmael.
Ishmael was born, not Isaac was born. When Abraham received the message about the circumcision, Ishmael was 15 years old. That says the Bible. So Abraham and Ishmael. And the Bible says that Abraham also have done the circumcision to all the males in his family. But he made also the circumcision. For sure somebody have done it to him. He's not able to do it to him. It's possible, maybe, we don't know. But this is not the point. Now, in this trip, the two sons of Moses were not circumcised. And the spirit of prophecy explained to us that Sephora was the problem. Sephora said to his husband, "You are a husband of blood to me." And the angel came and said to Moses, "Your children are going to die." And immediately he circumcised his children. So then Sephora went back to her father with the children. And then Moses and Aaron met together and went to Egypt. Yeah? So now, when Moses came back to the desert with almost 1 million people, 600,000 male, then Jethro came to bring to him his wife and the two children. And in this moment, can you imagine how impressive was also for Jethro and from Sephora that to see all this multitude of people there? So they saw the fulfillment of the prophecy. They saw. Because who was Sephora? Which was the origin of Sephora? Of Jethro. And the Bible says that Jethro was a priest of Jehovah. So they were from whom? Descendants. Descendants from whom? From Abraham? Yes. Which son?
Isaac.
From Isaac? Isaac had only two sons. No other wives, only Rebekah, and only two sons. So Esau went to the other part of the Jordan. So from Jacob came the 12 tribes. Let us see. Let us go to Genesis. And we have said this yesterday. The answer was given yesterday. That was one of the sons of Keturah, the wife that Abraham married after the death of Sarah. Chapter 25. Then again, so we find in 24:67 that Sarah died. And then in 25 first say, then again Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah. And she bare him Thimram, Josham, Medan, Miriam, Isbak, and Shua. Yeah? So how many children in total? From Keturah, how many? And how many before? So how many altogether? Yes. And that's what saying yesterday, and this was correct. 8 in total. So if somebody asks how many children have Abraham?
8.
8 children. Legal children. They were legal children. Yeah? From Agar, the Lord recognized Ismail as his son. He said, you need to send him back, but my blessing will be with him. Then with Isaac was the son of the promise. And then the other 6 children with Keturah. And we find almost all the chapter, part of the chapter, dedicated to him. And now we find here Miriam. And from Miriam is where Sephora came. So his father was a descendant of Miriam, one of the sons of Abraham with Keturah. Therefore, they knew about the true God. Therefore, they worshipped the true God. And therefore, the Bible presented Jethro as a priest of God. Okay, so Moses married Sephora, and Sephora knew about the message. They were part of the people of God. Not officially to the 12 tribes, but they came from this line. And therefore Jethro had the knowledge about the truth. Okay? Therefore it's very important the genealogies in the Bible, because explain to us the origin of the persons and how these people came together and develop the history of the people of God. And we find after this again, these people, and we find in the case of Jeremiah, the Rechabites. The Rechabites in the Bible were the descendants of Rechab, that were also the descendants of Jethro. And when you study the great controversy, Joseph Wolf meet the Rechabites in South Yemen that keep the Sabbath, that believe in the 2,300 evenings and mornings, and believe about the second coming of Jesus, the Rechabites. So this is extremely important. So in Exodus 18, we find the first step of the organization, beside this that was already done. And Jethro came, saw this great multitude, observed how Moses was working day and night, and what he suggested to him. Yes. And which was the structure? He presented a plan with a completely system and was inspired by God. That say the Bible and the testimonies. Go to Genesis 18. In the organization, which are the levels of our organization? Yes. And which are now in the present organization? Church, field, union, and we have division, and then we have the 70 together with the 3. So these were different steps in the process of the organization that we have until now. The reason that we have this structure, church, field, or association, union, division, is not by chance. If you study the testimonies, you will see the justification of this structure is based in Exodus 18. But the organization went through different steps, and now we have the 70 elders. And let us go to Numbers 11, and we will find this enlargement of the organization. And let us, because here is the chapter speak about different things, let us see. Yeah, this is when they receive meat to eat. And then, let me go. Then, and the Lord 23. And the Lord said unto Moses, Is the Lord's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. And Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacles. And the Lord came down in a cloud, and spoke unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not see. And this is very important for us today. So the spirit of prophecy that God had given to Moses, what the Bible text says, he took from this spirit given to Moses and give now to whom?
To the 70 elders.
To the 70 elders. So the same spirit, but now in the diversity. Because Moses was with the spirit of prophecy, Miriam was with the spirit of prophecy, Aaron was with the spirit of prophecy, and now from this spirit of prophecy that Moses received also was given to the 70 elders. So let us go to Joshua now. That was a very important character in the story of the people of God. And we said that he received oral communication from God. And Joshua 1:1 say, Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke unto Joshua, saying. So what we find here, and confirmed by the testimonies, is that he received oral communications, but not specific prophecies. And we will introduce a break now for 15 minutes to continue further on with this chronological study. So may the Lord bless this word in our hearts. Amen.